We could talk a little bit about faith and a little bit of action. Taking action to your faith, right? Kind of taking those steps whenever. Sometimes in life we live our life too much on feelings. Everybody understand that? I don't feel that. I don't feel this or I don't feel that. And if you live your life through feelings, you're gonna have a rough road because your feelings change daily. Goodness gracious! So my point kind of last week, and I don't know how good I made it, so I'm going to keep going. Faith without actions doesn't have a lot of fruit. We got to have some actions to go with our faith. And I've been asking all week, God, what do you want me to talk about? And it just comes right back to it. I believe we're in a time where if we don't understand this concept of having faith, that we're going to be in deep trouble, or not deep trouble. We're definitely going to have a harder time than we could if we would just understand that if we trust God, but God, right? I kept saying it last week. All these things, but God. But I'm going to talk today about. I couldn't decide on a name, so I'm going to give you all the names that I came up with. A radical faith, an extreme faith, blind faith, and even a childlike faith. And I come up with that one this morning. Trish saw me freaking out because I had a thought. It's when you preach, if you don't write it down, you have that thought and you got to write it down right now because man, it'll be gone in just a few minutes. So. A childlike faith. I was watching Layla this morning, just running around here, and it just made me think of when we were little, and you had that faith in your, a lot of times, I don't want to say that, your parents. I was going to say your dad, but that would be. Anyway, that childlike faith. It's the radical faith was the first one. Just a radical faith, right? Get back to a radical faith. You remember when you first believed? When you first got saved and it was just like you had this energy and you do anything. You just had so much faith. You knew God changed your heart. You knew God had done this. And then over years, sometimes that, and it's biblical. I'm going to show you some scripture, but it's biblical, or at least it warns about it, of losing and having to fight for it. So we're going to start in, this kind of faith that I'm talking about shouldn't be radical to us. It shouldn't be radical to us. This should be normal. This should be how we live. Because without this, it's kind of hard. How are we gonna look at people and they're like looking at your life going, well, I did that. Or is it going to be, how in the world did you get there? How did you do that? I knew you back then and now I know you now, or I've seen where you came from, where you're at, and what God's done for you and all these things that it's unexplainable. And you're like, I don't know, but God did this for me, and it gives Him glory. If we're doing all the easy stuff, there's not much glory that's given on that. And then the next question, or I come up with another question, how important is faith? How important is faith to God? What's Hebrews 11:6 say? Anybody know what Hebrews 11, oh, there it is, look at there, she's fast. But without faith, it is impossible to please Him. For he who comes to God must believe that He is, and that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. That's a pretty important statement right there, isn't it? It is impossible to please God without radical faith. When you look at the disciples, these guys were just sitting there minding their own business. It's pretty radical to have a guy walk by, hey, come with me, let's go. That's pretty radical, isn't it? They had radical faith in who Jesus was. So that's what I'm at, and this is going back to the culture thing that I'm talking about. I'd like to build in this church. The culture of limitlessness. Quit putting limits on what God can and can't do. You look at people, you look at situations, you watch CNN, you watch Fox, you watch whatever. You watch all these things, and man, it's pretty daunting when you start really looking at it. And thinking, well, how many, I guarantee almost everybody in this room said this, well, there's nothing I can do about it. Right? Anybody ever said that? You're watching the news, there's nothing I can do. Nothing I can do about it. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Be obedient. We're going to talk about obedience later. So 1 Timothy 1, verse 18. I'm going to read this one. I asked Linda to pull this up in the New American Standard just because I like the way it worded it. So if you look at 1 Timothy 1, verse 18, it says, "This command I entrust to you, Timothy, my son, in accordance with the prophecies previously made concerning you, that by them you fight the good fight, keeping the faith, a good conscience with the same, which some, have rejected and suffered shipwreck in regard to their faith." So go back to 18 for me. That by them you fight the good fight. Okay, that's where I want to kind of focus a little bit. Fighting the good fight of what? Fighting the good fight of faith. And then the second part, when it talks about some have rejected it, rejected what? They haven't rejected God necessarily, right? They've kind of rejected the faith, and now all of a sudden they're kind of a shipwreck, right? I mean, things are kind of gone wrong in their life because they've kind of rejected the faith that God has given them. And if you drop down to 1 Timothy 4, verse 1, it says, "Now the Spirit expressly says that in the latter times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons." And then one more before I venture off into what I want to talk about and go to 1 Timothy 6:12. Fight the good fight of faith. Fight the good fight of faith. I'm here to kind of talk about that fight. We got to fight for it. It's not something that you can just say, "I have it," and then you go on. It's a fight. Every day it's a fight. I mean, he's calling us this radical faith. Faith is a fight that we have to fight every day so we can hold on to the call that we have, that God has for us. You have to fight for it. You can't just say it and then sit down. I know pastors talk about that for years, sitting on your blessed assurance, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. You can't just say salvation and then that's it. No, there's a whole other fight that's going on that God's trying to get us to dive into with Him. And understand, He's not asking us to do anything hard or complicated or big. And I said this last week, He's not asking you to move the mountain. He's asking you to take a step, and then as you're stepping, He's going to move the mountain for you, right? And so we look a lot of times at the problem, and they say, "Well, there's nothing I can do. God, you're just going to have to do it." And then we sit down and say, "Well, I'm praying." And that's okay. It's okay to pray, but you should pray and then get up and go do what He's told you to do while you were praying, right? So there's steps after it. There's not just, it's not just as easy as I'm going to pray about it and then God's just going to fix everything. He's waiting on you to fix it. I've done this so many times all my life. I'm like, "God, fix this," and He's like, I've already given you everything that you need to fix it. So get up and go fix it. Here's how you fix it. He'll give it to you. He'll give you the steps. If nothing else, He'll give you the next step. He may not give you all of them. And I'm going to give you some examples of what I'm talking about here in a little bit because I got some stories that that I have stepped in my life and just we got to get back to it. We've grumbled too much and not lived by faith. That's a tough one. I always think of grumbling this way. You look at the people of Israel when they were in Egypt, right? Or the chosen people. They weren't the Israel yet, but people of God were in Egypt, and you know the story of all the plagues, and Moses comes and he gets them out, and they split the sea, and they walk through it, and then they go through all that, and then they're out, and what are they doing? They're grumbling, they're complaining. Well, we had it better when we were in Egypt. Where's the water? Where's the food? At least we had gold, we had this, we had that, and blah blah blah. They wanted to go back. So my point is that God does things in our lives and we're all good, but then over time, sometimes that faith starts to kind of we have to fight for it. We have to continue to look for it. We have to pray for it. We have to ask for it. We have to build on it. We have to. Romans 1:17. For it is the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. First of all, I'm gonna think in a perfect world, okay, if we get this down, if we really, really, really intentionally, every time we take a step, it's because God told me to take a step. He's told me which way to step. That we can live from faith to faith. We don't have to go through the valleys necessarily. I'm not saying everything's going to be perfect, but even in the valley, there's faith to faith. There's battles and things going on that we can win on a daily basis in our personal lives and for other people. So the first part of that one is the faith to faith. The second part is the just shall live by faith. Some versions will say the righteous shall live by faith. Either way, we're called to live this way, not just talk about it. It's got to be an action. I'm going to read you, or we're going to read, I should say, my scariest verse, Revelation 2. And I'm not saying it's scary because, God's fixing to whoop us, but it's scary because it relates to my life a little bit. We can start in verse 1. I'll just read through it real quick. To the angel of the church at Ephesus write, these things says, he who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks in the midst 7 golden lampstands. Verse 2, I know your works, your labor, your patience, and that you cannot bear those who are evil. I mean, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? I mean, anyway, I'll keep going. I know your works, you cannot. And you have tested those who say they are apostles and are not, and have found them liars. And you have persevered and have patience and have labored for my name's sake and have not become weary. I mean, right there is the scary part to me, You think about it as a believer. I'm talking about over time, right? You do these things and you persevere and you plow the fields and you do all these things. And then over time, human nature sometimes causes us to lose something that we had in the beginning, right? I mean, everybody, I don't know if anybody else has been through that, but I have. And so I believe we all face that to a certain degree as we lose a little bit of that. I don't know if you remember in the first day of school in high school, like your freshman year, you walk in and man, there's an excitement, and you're this and that, and then by the time you're senior, you can't wait to get out of there. It's just kind of human nature, right? It's the same building, same teachers, same everything, but 4 years later, you know what I'm saying? So, next verse, verse 4. Nevertheless, I have, that's always, when you see that, you should stop and pay attention. Nevertheless, I have this against you. You have left your first love. And that can mean all kinds of things in your life. But to me, you always got to start at the top, right? And I'm not saying you don't love God. But do you remember, if you've ever been in love, like on an earthly love, like Jessica and I or whatever, and how when that's new, man, I'll mow down mountains. I'll do whatever it takes to be together. You'll do all these things, and then 20 years later, you're like, oh, well, Yes, Randy, don't shake your head. Now, and I've said this 1,000 times, people tell me all the time that I'm lucky to have a marriage, almost 30 years now, and we've this, that, and the other, and we're still in love, and no, it ain't got nothing to do with luck. And that's the same with our faith. It's not about luck. I'm lucky to be faithful. I'm lucky to have God do this for me. I'm lucky that God's still touching this, doing all these things. That's not luck. It's hard work. It's work. You have to work at it. You can't just, you can't take it for granted. How about that? Faith or love. You can't take either for granted because it's so easy to just lose sight of just a little bit of it, and then it becomes just a little bit more, and then you become a little more complacent, and then It just grows and it feeds. So you got to fight for it every single day. Verse 5, remember therefore from where you have fallen. And and the next word is one nobody likes. But what do you do when you feel that way, or when you're feeling down, or you feel like your faith is not big enough? What do you need to do? The next word, repent. Okay, what does that mean? Come groveling? Come get on your knees and crawl around and lay down and do. All it means is to do what? Pastor's taught us this. Somebody, come on, he's in here. Change your mind. Change the way you think. Change how you speak. How am I talking about these things? Because I talked a little bit last week. It's real easy to go down the road of grumbling and mumbling and doom and gloom and excessive misery and all that kind of stuff, right? But it's not bad. It's not whatever when you go down that road. Just when you figure it out, when you hear it, stop it. Okay. This doesn't mean you need to do something huge. He wants us to trust Him. He just wants us to trust Him. Anybody ever been in a relationship with somebody that doesn't trust you? It doesn't last very long, first of all. I'm not going to be around somebody who doesn't trust me. If you don't trust me, what are we doing here? You might as well, it's hard to be in love with somebody who doesn't trust you. I mean, the relationship's going to be strained at the very least, right? And I've asked myself this question, why does he need me? He doesn't need us, He wants us. He wants. The whole reason we're here is because He wanted a relationship with us. He wanted a relationship with somebody who was like Him, right? Don't start calling your congressman. I'm not saying any of us are God Himself, but what I'm saying is He made us in His likeness. He made us just like Him. It says it. You can go read in Genesis. He made us just like Him. He wants us to be with Him. He doesn't want to do it alone. I know this is Cowboy Church, so we got ranchers who like to do things alone, but it's also nice when you have your buddy with you, isn't it? Or a couple buddies who are good workers. Anybody ever had somebody that you just worked well together? Oh, it's a whole lot nicer then, isn't it? When you're building a fence by yourself or with somebody, it's a whole different ball game. It's so much easier, so much more enjoyable. It's the simple acts of obedience is what He's asking us. So He can do His part. He can't do His part. He won't do His part until you do your part. And I know that sounds like works, but I'm telling you, if we'll move, He'll move. If we're sitting still, He's saying, okay, take the next step. And then as soon as you take that step, He's there. But He's waiting on you to take the next step. So if you have something in your life that you've been, praying about, wanting to change, looking for a miracle, ask Him what the next step is. He may not tell you the whole path all the way down the line, but He will tell you the next step. I guarantee you that. I do believe we're in a time right now, as a body in the United States anyway, at least I know in this body, I believe He's a lamp at our feet. He's showing us the next step. He hasn't shown us the entire path yet. I know Pastor and I have talked about, there's a couple things going on. We're like, well, we're not sure exactly what this means, but I know, it means something. So let's start moving towards it, right? So you start moving. And then along the way, He shows you the next step and the next step and the next step. It's so critical, y'all, that we're taking steps and not just waiting on Him to do something. Romans 1:5. I'm going to skip down a little bit. I want to read that before I tell my story here. Through Him we have received grace and apostleship for obedience to the faith. He's asking us to be, faith and obedience is the same thing. Nobody likes that word, and we're in the United States, man. We're independent. We're rebels. And that's okay. It's okay. And He wants us to have freedom. He's not going to make us do anything. But He's asking for obedience. He goes, if you want this, here's what you do. Because we ask Him for things all the time, but then we don't do anything about it, right? You ask Him for, to heal a relationship. But what are you doing? What are you doing? Obedience to faith. And as I thought about, He gave me a Revelations 2, the first love, and then I started asking. It's not an accident I'm wearing this shirt or these boots. The first time I ever gave a message, I was wearing this shirt and these boots. I know it's a little bit old school. Jessica likes it, but looks like my granddad's shirt. John likes it. I know. He told me that's a nice shirt there. But I wore this on purpose today because I want to, and I'm asking us to kind of get back to not what we did before, but how we were doing it. That radical faith of taking steps, even though we don't know where we're going. We don't know what the answer is. It's scary. But if we want to change our community, if we want to change our country, if we want to change society, it is going to be scary. Because there's people out there that will not like it. They're not going to agree with you. And you have to work on that faith to understand, yeah, this is going to be hard, and people may look at me funny, and they may, but God's going to change it. He told me He's going to change it. I can't remember what year it was, 2005. For the previous 6 or 8 years, and Jessica was there, so if I say any of this wrong, you can just tell me. I had come between 16 and 22. I was not in good shape. And I don't mean that like physically or anything, but I just meant, I wasn't making great decisions. I just was a mess. I was angry, bitter, and everything else. And salvation I had salvation at that time of my life. But I didn't have the blessings of what God was doing, that could have been doing, should have been doing during that time. But I knew I wanted to change, and so knowing myself, I just go out and I work hard and I just make it better, right? So I decided to change. Went to school. We didn't have no money. I think one year our income tax said we made $7. It actually said we made our gross income was $7. So it was lean years. We were like, I'm gonna thanks to my mother. She was like, as long as you're going to school, you can live with me. So we did. I was like, all right, cool. Just had Drake. So we had 2 kids, and but worked really hard to get through school. Got my first job. It's crazy how it all happened. But I'd been coaching and teaching for a few years, and God told me to start it. Oh gosh, it makes me sweat just to even think about it. And I don't remember exactly how it first came into, we started talking about starting a trucking company. And I just got stronger and stronger feelings that that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't know, but I just, and in my mind, okay, this is all the battle that's going on up here. But God, I just got a degree. I just bought a house. I just got all these things. Everything's the way I wanted them. And he kind of, I hate admitting this, but he's like, that's not what I asked for. It's what you asked for. And again, I'm not saying that he couldn't use all that stuff and it hasn't been good for me. But that was his response to what I was saying at the moment, right? And so I said, okay, well, God, you're going to have to give me a audible, booming voice. This can't be, you're going to, and I remember specifically, very vividly, I was laying in bed reading my Bible, I think. I was praying, and I said, God, you're going to have to give me something. It's got to be for real. I can't just do it because I think it sounds cool. I'm just not going to do it. So if you want me to do it, and right as soon as I said that, a knock on the door. And I've told this story before. If you've heard it, I'm sorry. And then a guy from across the street that I've met one time was standing there, and we talked for a second. And he goes, "Have you ever thought about starting a trucking company?" Oh. But I don't want to start a trucking company. That's not what I wanted. I mean, I was really happy with what I was doing. I enjoyed it. I love coaching. I love teaching. Anyway, so that was my moment when I'm like, okay, God, I have faith that this is what you have for me, right? I went all in. I had a radical believing that this is what he had called me to do at that moment. No matter how it looked, I didn't know how it was going to be. But he told me, all right, go to the sign company and get a sign made. So we went up. My brother and I talked about what we wanted to name it, and, oh, I'm sorry. No, first he said, okay, I missed a step. The first thing he told me to do was go down and, what do you call it when you reserve a name of your business, or you go to the register and you register the name of your business so nobody else can steal it or whatever it's called. Did the trademark, thank you. I think trademark the name. So we went up there and we did that. It only cost like $10. I can do that. So I went up there, we got that, and then we had a little piece of paper saying, B&E Trucking. So we had that part. And he says, all right, go get a sign made. All right, God, I don't have a truck. I don't have any money. I don't have a trailer. I don't have nothing. I didn't have anything. I mean, and I don't know if you guys were like me, but at the end of each month, I'm looking at the bank account saying, are we gonna make it? Or not are we gonna make it, but we got to quit spending now because we get paid next week, and as a teacher you get paid once a month, and that's sometimes difficult. It's hard to budget your money for a guy like me. So I didn't have any money, and so I forgot where was I at? Oh, I made a sign. So I made a sign. So I had the sign, and I had this magnetic sign about like this, and it had everything on there. And then he's like, "Okay, go get your IFTA sticker, is what it's called, where you gotta pay. You have this little sticker on your truck saying you're paying taxes on. It's a truck thing. It's a commercial vehicle thing. You got to have one of those. So I went and got that. I don't think it costs very much at all. So I got that. And he's like, "Go get your authority." And I was like, "But I don't know where." And I don't even remember now where I found the number for this lady in like Kentucky or North Carolina or something that her specialty was getting trucking companies the authority to drive, because you can't just pick up a load and take off to Oklahoma or whatever. You have to have authority to go every time you cross a line. You have to have that authority by that state to be able to haul commercially in that state. So you have to go through this whole huge thing. And this lady said, I told her the whole story, what I was doing, and she basically did it for it was not much, a few $100s. And then I had authority to run in 48 states. She's like, "Well, do you want to do, all the states?" I was like, "Well, I'm never going to Alaska or Hawaii, so we'll leave those off." And, and so we just did the continent or whatever. So I had that, and, and then this is where I feel like, anyway, I'm not going to go there. Then the next step was, we had to get a truck, and, I don't know if you bought a brand new dually. That's where the money, that's where the rubber meets the road there. We're not talking about a few $100s or a few $1,000s or anything like that. And so, hopefully my dad's not listening, but this is the point where he got involved, and he'd never really ever given me money before. I'm not saying that he didn't give me stuff or whatever. A lot of times they didn't have it, or that was just never something that he really did. But he's like, "Hey, let's go. We're going to go buy a truck." And we got in the car and we drove down, and he co-signed for me to buy a brand new. Shouldn't have bought a Ford. Hey, the demise of my business was I bought a Ford, but it was a 6.0, so the 6.0 was a bit of a limit. But anyway, so now I had the truck, and then a few weeks later, we found the trailer and we bought the trailer, and I had to do some things to it, but anyway, long story short, I can't keep going forever, but each time he gave me a step, I just took the step, right? I mean, I just took the next step. I didn't know how it was going to be, but I'm telling you, within, I don't know, 6 months or so, I had everything I needed to commercially drive a truck in the United States. And so I was sitting there, and I remember this too. I don't know if Mom remembers this or not, but I was sitting in the house, and, I was doing what I was talking about earlier. I was like, okay, I prayed, and now I'm just sitting there. Now God's got to do what's next, But then Mom calls me out of the blue. She's like, I think you're supposed to just go. And I'm like, what? Exactly. That was my, what? I think I had like $150. Like literally, that's how much money I had. And I don't know if you've ever put a 40-something gallon. This was in 2006, right? 5 or 6. It was right when that first little gas boom where it was like $4 a gallon for diesel. And so, if you've ever $4 times 40, that's like a lot. I think it was like $100 to $125 per tank. And so after I'd filled up my truck, I think I only had, barely $15. And so when she did that anyway, Mom called and she goes, I think God's telling you just to go. And so we prayed about it, and I was like, okay, I think you're right. And so we called up another story is I found this guy who finds loads for hot shots, partial loads, and he would get you set up with all over the country and just find you loads and tell you to go here, and take it there. And so anyway, I called this guy up. I was like, I guess we're ready. Here we go. And so he found me some loads in Houston, and we went down and picked them all up, and we were ready to go. And so we take off. And I had just enough gas to get to John and Becky's house. And we pulled into Canyon or Amarillo, Happy, wherever, south Amarillo. And luckily they had some food. They fed us. And I believe they gave me some diesel. I think they filled up the truck. And we took off again. We were supposed to go to Utah, I think, or something like that. And over the next 6 months, the entire time, it was like I had just enough to get to the next spot. It was absolutely amazing. Every time we got to where we were going, miraculously something happened that we got a meal, a hotel, a shower, a new tank of gas. We broke down for the first time. I'm just kidding. Fords are fine. But we broke down, and we had this guy, and I called him, it was a Jamaican gentleman living in Rawlins, Wyoming. Yeah, because we were broke down outside of Rawlins, Wyoming, and it was cold. I mean, I was living in Houston. I wasn't even here yet, so I mean, it was cold. I think I had a T-shirt and a pair of socks. I mean, we didn't have any kind of hot, warm clothes, and the truck wouldn't run at all. So we're sitting on the side of I-80, right outside of Rawlins, Wyoming. If you've ever been there, there is nothing out there. And this guy pulls up, we call somebody, and you can't just call a regular tow truck because it's a 40-foot trailer with we were 50-something feet long, so you couldn't just, anyway, this guy pulls up and he takes us into town, and just a fantastic guy. And he actually towed us into, then we didn't know what we were going to do because we pull into Rawlins, Wyoming, and the Ford dealership's like, oh, today's the first day of deer season. Minimum 2 to 3 weeks before I can even have anybody look at it because they've all taken 2 weeks off. They're out deer hunting. So then we were going, how do we get, we're just sitting there losing money. It's just like coming out of me. I'm just losing money like crazy. I got this load on the back and all these things. And so like the next day, we found out we could get it into Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is about 3 hours away. And so I called my Jamaican fella friend, and he's like, yeah, man, I'll get you there. And so he comes and takes us all the way to Cheyenne, and when we get there, he's like, he wouldn't even take any money. He towed us all the way to Cheyenne. And it's just time after time. We'll pull into California one time. We hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, showered, and Jessica just happened to get paid that day. So we were able to get this. And then an invoice would come in, and every time God would just tell us the next step, the next step, the next step. That's how we have to start living our life. We may not know where the next step is, but what I do know is that God's not going to leave you out in Rawlins, Wyoming in the cold without helping you. But guess what? If I had been still sitting in Houston waiting for the right time and for me to have enough money and for these things to all come together where it was all perfect, I'd still be sitting down there with a big truck still trying to pay for it. We have to take the steps. I asked myself right after that happened, I was like, what? Because I knew with every part of my being that God had called that. I mean, it was all step by step. There was too many things that had happened that were supernatural, and I knew that was what God had called us to do. And so like I asked, why did it? Because we ended up not making it. And God was building a man, not a business. And that's what he's doing with you. We look at the results and think that, well, it must not be God because I'm not a millionaire anymore. I'm not, the relationship that I really wanted to heal is not this, or whatever the case may be. The step that I took, I feel like in my perception that it failed. And God's sitting there saying, no. It didn't fail because I'm building you up. I'm building a person that I can trust to take the next step, Somebody that's going to trust me. That's what he wants. That's what he's looking for. That's what he's working for in our lives, is to get somebody that's going to trust him. And unfortunately, there's only one way to prove trust. There's only one way to prove you trust somebody. Is you have to, when they take the step, or when you, and it may not be good for you, but you're saying, okay, just trust me. This is not looking good. Do trust me, man. If you'll turn right here and go left there, but if you don't ever do that, you're not showing any trust. Or do you trust that person, right? Until you get in that dark, alley, whenever you're not sure what's going on, but then all of a sudden the light comes on. Anyway, if you don't ever go down the alley, you'll never know. And I asked myself this. I was like, why would I do that? Right? Why would I have done that? I just got a bachelor's degree. I had worked so hard to get it. We were doing pretty good. Why would I took out my retirement so I could do all this stuff. So now my retirement's gone, which I wish I had that back now. But, what are you going to do? But my point is, why would I do that? It's like, who do you love? Do you love all that stuff? Do you love that degree? Do you love the job? Or do you love, this is God talking. Or do you love me? This is what I want. This is what I want you to do. Trust me. Do you trust me or not? And with just a couple of minutes left, I always like to do this because, thank you. I want to read out of Hebrews 11, 1 through 6, out of the Passion. This one just really, really, really does, it's just really good. And this is, right before I read this, I want to read this last. So just leave it up. So how do you, when you feel yourself waning, or you feel yourself not feeling as faithful, or you're feeling down, or you're feeling like, I don't know if I have enough faith for this, God. I'm not sure that I really see, or I don't know if I can take that. What do you do? What's a couple of things that you can do? Here's what I do. First of all, there's four small things. First, remember. When you're not sure if you can trust Him, because please don't act like you've never questioned this. When you feel like God's telling you something and you don't understand, you're in your mind, you're thinking, can I trust Him? Can I trust Him? Especially early on, before you have a bunch of experiences, you've asked yourself that question. But remember for what He's done for you. Remember what He's done in the past. If not for you, remember what He's done in Jessica's life, or remember what He's done in Waco's life, or whatever. Look back and remember the things that He's done, where you know that God did that, because there's no other way that happened. Prophecies. If you've ever received a prophecy, I highly recommend you either record it, write it down, whatever. Go back and look at them. What has God told you? What has God given you? And maybe a prophecy could be just David walking up and saying, Angie, you're going to be, more successful, whatever, right? Go back and ask David, do you remember, what you said? Go back and look at those prophecies or pastor, whoever that's given you a prophecy. Find those. Stand on them. Read them. Print them off and put them on your car. I don't know, whatever you need to do, but keep looking at them. This one's a big one. COVID's kind of wrecked some of this, but the company you keep, who you hanging out with. And I'm not saying this is a big one for me, so I need to make sure I get this right. When I say that, I'm talking about when I'm feeling down about my faith or about, whatever, you need to be around believers. I don't care if it's in your house or if it's here or if it's in the Methodist, Baptist, wherever. I don't care where it's at. But find somebody who is full of faith that you can be around. Because they're going to help you build that faith back up. They're going to help you. They're not going to let you quit, first of all. If they're a true believer and a true faithful, if they love you, they're going to do that. So that, make sure you're keeping the right company. And then promises. That's always a good one. But the Bible is full of promises. And understanding, I heard them in the back, you guys in the back talking about identity and things. Understanding that God promised that to me. If He promised it to me, then He promised it to me. And He ain't no liar. So always looking at those promises. So that's just a few things that, as you feel yourself, needing a little bit of encouragement in whatever steps you feel like God's telling you to do, or you don't understand, or you don't see the fruits, or whatever, those 4 things will help build you up and keep you faithful and keep you moving, give you enough gumption, I always called it, to take another step. Because there's sometimes when that leg don't feel like taking another step, you're just like, but still, you take the step anyway, because I'm telling you, God's going to be there. So, Hebrews 11, and I think this is funny. I was kind of hoping Jerry's out back. Hopefully he can hear me. I thought he was about to preach my whole message again, because he pulled up Hebrews 11. But I encourage you, Pastor encouraged some of the leadership team. I encourage you to read Hebrews 11. Read it in several different versions, like Jerry was talking about. Read just one little part of it and ask God, what does that mean? Because all these people in Hebrews 11 did simple things. They didn't do anything that hard. I love the one about Abraham. He told Abraham to go. So Abraham knew, he didn't know where he was going. Could you imagine that? Miss Kitty, I need you to pack up as much as you can carry, and I need you to leave. Exactly. That's what God told him. All right, Abraham, pack up your family, everything you can carry, and go. He didn't tell him which direction. He goes, wherever you go, I'm going to give you, wherever your foot steps, that's what I'm going to give you. So he didn't know where he was going, but he knew where he couldn't stay. Right? And so sometimes that may be as simple as, I don't know where I'm going, but I know that I can't stay right where I'm at. So we take a step. We pack up our things and we start moving forward. Hebrews 11, verse 1. Now faith brings our hopes into reality. Anybody have any hopes that aren't reality yet? Of course we do. Everybody does. Faith is how we get those hopes into reality. And becomes the foundation needed to acquire the things we long for. Man, this is so good. The foundation that is needed to acquire the things you're longing for. If it's nothing but a relationship, that a son, a daughter, a friend, an uncle, an aunt, if it's finances, if it's whatever, faith is the foundation that you need to acquire the things you're longing for. It is all the evidence required to prove what is still unseen. Verse 2. This testimony of faith is what previous generations were commended for. Faith empowers us to see that the universe was created and beautiful, coordinated by the power of God's words. He spoke in his invisible realm and gave birth to all that is seen. Faith moved Abel to choose. Abel, this is a good one. What did Abel do different than Cain? He took the time to make sure whatever he was offering to God was his best. Sometimes it's not changing where you're going or what you're doing, but instead of make sure that what you're doing is the absolute best that you can do. Right? That may be all that's required. While you don't see the fruit that you want, maybe you're not actually doing exactly the best that you can do. Go ahead and go to the next one, please. Faith translated Enoch. We talked about Enoch, and I like this right here, and I got this morning. Why was Enoch translated? Because he had become a pleasure to God. How did he become a pleasure to God? How do we please God? Faith, obedience. So what did Enoch do? Did he do anything crazy? He believed. He had faith in God. And without faith living within us would be impossible to please God. For we come to God in faith knowing that He is real. That's a good first step. We got to understand that He's real. There's a lot of people in this world that don't believe He's real. There's only one way that we can show it to Him. We can't pull God out of the sky and show Him. It's through miracles, signs, and wonders, through your life, taking that step and understanding where you're going. For we come to God in faith, knowing that He is real and that He rewards what? What does it say? He rewards the faith of those who passionately seek Him. Pretty important, y'all. I feel like somebody's in here that needs some prayer this morning. I don't know who it is. I haven't seen it clear. But if you're here this morning, please don't leave here. A want to come up, that's fine. Here in a second, I'll pray to dismiss this, or I may have Pastor Clyde. I don't know. I'll figure that out in a second. But if you have a need, I don't know. I don't know. I just know I was supposed to take the step to make an offer of there's people in this building, if it's me, if it's Pastor Becky, if it's Jessica, if it's Gavin, whoever it is, find somebody here that you feel comfortable talking to, and we'll encounter God together. You want to close, Pastor?
We get the opportunity every day to exercise our faith. You know something you exercise? I exercise my belly. It gets bigger. It gets more dependable. So we have an opportunity. Thank you, Pastor. That's good. We need to start using our faith for something besides, I got faith enough to go home and get dinner today. Let's start seeing what God wants and start stepping into that and using our faith to pursue Him more. You know, even the devil believes God's won. The devil's got that down pat. And what makes us different, we believe He's a rewarder of those that passionately seek Him, that passionately want Him. You want something in life? Start wanting God just a little bit more, okay? Let's just close in prayer. If somebody needs prayer for something, y'all come up here and get you some. Or grab somebody and say, pray for me, I need your help today. Father God, we just love you and we thank you for what we've got today, the word that we heard today. And Father, we thank you that you're pouring into each one of our lives today, Father, the greatness that you carry with us all the time. And Father, right now, we just start releasing our heart to be filled with you. But Father, we take whatever we got in the way and we do away with that and let you come and fill us completely up. And Father, we just love you today. We want more of you. And here we go. We're getting ready to tackle a world that needs us to stand up and say, whoa, no more. In Jesus' name, amen. We love y'all, every one of you.
Kingdom come, your will be done. Jesus, reign over me. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Jesus, reign over me. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Jesus, reign over me. You reign over all the earth, we sing it. You reign, justice and peace you bring it. You reign, Holy One, you reign. You reign over all the earth, we sing it. You reign, justice and peace you bring it. You reign, Holy One, you reign. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Jesus, reign over me. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Jesus, reign over me. Your kingdom come, your will be done. Jesus, reign over me. You reign over all the earth, we sing it. You reign, justice and peace you bring it. You reign, Holy One, you reign. Over star-filled skies, over all created lives, what was always meant to be, your glory reigning over me. You're above anything thrown my way, victorious. I live to stand in you always. You reign over all the earth, we sing it. You reign, justice and peace you bring it.